Hello and good evening, all, and welcome to the Tea House. This is your humble proprietor, Belial. Today I'm just going to be doing one of my unasked, opinionated videos. You know, I dislike the word religious. Um, the reason I dislike that word is simply because it means nothing. It means exactly what the person you're asking it means. Are you religious if you go to the mosque 5 times a day, or if you go to every Juma prayer, but at the same time you rob people or sell drugs? Yeah. Some people would look at me and say, like, oh, the brother must be religious because he wears a kufi cap and keeps a beard. You know, but, like that, the way religious is used in our society, in the context of American society, is very performative. You have essentially people who want to be seen being religious rather than living the actual authentic experience of their faith tradition. And there are Muslims who do this, but I live in a predominantly Christian area and I see them do it more often, where, and like how they would describe it is they have a head full of scripture and a heart full of hate, essentially. Yeah. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not trying to specifically criticize them, but it's just easy to point to a very prominent example, and that's essentially the people who are outwardly showing religiosity while at the same time not taking in any of the actual lessons the faith tradition actually would be useful to them. It's the kind of same energy I discussed in the video where I talked about what's happened to Muslim men these days, where people's entire spiritual ethos can be described as essentially just calling out people for doing the haram thing. Never mind that we even learned from the ulama of the past that we should always give the easiest ruling, because the people cannot handle the harder rulings. So you should always have the easiest ruling. And also, when we talk about how you should always give an excuse for your brother, if your brother smells like alcohol, assume it's because somebody spilled it on him. But in our age we live in, people use religiosity less as an authentic expression of spirituality and what we would describe as Tawsuf, Sufism, the search for the inner meaning and inner relationship with God. Instead, people today essentially want to be seen being religious. They don't want to actually live that religiosity. And this very shallow religiosity, this very shallow expression of faith, quote unquote faith, in American society isn't new. People have been doing it for a very long time, where they compartmentalize their faith into essentially ignoring certain aspects of said faith. And you can find it in groups like the Ku Klux Klan, for example, who would say they were fighting for white Christian America while at the same time persecuting black Christians in the South and other parts of America, because that wasn't just a Southern issue as much as people will try to make you think it was. And once again, I'm not trying to pick on the American Christians. It's just that they're the majority of society, so it's easier to point to them as an example. Most people will understand. But there really is a danger of religiosity, essentially, especially in this time, where it's just not being expressed in a healthy way. With the decline of traditional America, a lot of people are looking for meaning, and it's not really expressing itself necessarily in cults, which happened in the 1970s. It's more or less expressing itself within a performative idea of what spirituality is. And you can really see this in people like J.D. Vance, for example, who converted to Catholicism from, I don't really know what branch of Christianity, may have been evangelicalism, but there's the people who convert to a faith essentially just for the aesthetic of that faith. And it's something that you have to correct a lot of new Muslims on in some regards. Not all, but a lot of times you have to correct people and say like, no, Islam's not what you're thinking it is. And that comes from a lot of people like coming from like the red pill kind of thing where they're like, oh, the Muslims say women like shut up, and that's not what we say. And then you have like people who are, I'm not going to name anybody because I'm not going to backbite against somebody, but like the kind of like red pill people who convert to Islam and then it becomes a big issue, where they essentially have like the wrong ideas of Islam. And that's something we have to do as a community. We have to correct these people. We don't takfir them. We don't say like, oh, you're not a Muslim, but essentially we have to like gently correct them. And that's something that a lot of people do. As I said, some people's spirituality when it comes to experiencing the deen is essentially just to critique a woman like is wearing a coat over an abaya haram. Let's not even talk about the performative ways some people dress. Like I wear a kufi because I like to wear a kufi. It's a sunnah, but it's a weak sunnah. I wear it as an expression of my Islamic identity to show solidarity with the sisters who wear hijab. Now that is literally the only reason I really wear it. Also, I do cover up when I pray. That's a stronger sunnah, but that's the reason I wear it. I don't wear it to be like, oh, look at me, I'm the super Muslim here. No, it's specific for specific reasons. Honestly, you can look at someone and just say like, you give them all the excuses, just assume that's why people are doing it, is that there's a legitimate reason behind it. But, there is a subset where you look at people and you see that like, the people want to make the deen as hard as possible. And I'm kind of toting that thin line between giving excuses to people and also gently critiquing people. And that's what I want to do here, is to gently critique. If you live in a place where it is snowing or hailing or rain, wearing a thobe everywhere is not making you more Islamic than the person who's wearing the jacket. I think Sheikh Abdul Hakim Marood said it the best when, you don't go to like the worst dentist, You don't be like, oh, I suffered the pain from the real dentistry, so I'm a dental mujahideen, But I think that, that's just an example I can give is like, I live in a desert, so, I'll wear a thobe every once in a while because it kind of makes sense out here. But if you're in a place that's hailing and raining, it's okay to, just dress like a German, essentially, or like a mainstream German. But that's, I guess, neither here nor there. That's just a very mild example of expressing outward religiosity while ignoring the inward parts of it. And you can see this in social media too. A lot of people will have their religious icons or symbols in their bios, and then they'll just be saying like the most heinous things, as if like that's who was representing that group of people. You just see the same kind of stuff over and over again, where people essentially become feral because of the anonymity of social media. It's completely insane, really. But, that's the kind of world we live in. A lot of people have this, converting to religions for aesthetic and not actually searching within for a greater meaning that works for you, or just, searching for God. No, people essentially search for the aesthetic. Not all people. I've met genuine people who have converted to different religions or become part of different faith traditions and express their faith in an authentic way. I try my best to express my faith in an authentic way. And I think, I don't think I'm that good at it, but, like Dave Chappelle said, like, what's the prerequisite to being Muslim? I don't know, believing in God and stuff, But that's a whole other conversation to have, and I think we've had it before in one of my other videos. But, we live in an age that is predominantly performative, and that's most things, actually. Social media has really exacerbated the problem itself, where people just show like the best parts of their lives, and that can lead to where people do not actually have a relationship with God or with their like their understanding of the unity of the universe. People just don't have that relationship. Essentially, we live in an era where people are looking and grasping at straws to be seen as being religious, but they actually aren't taking the lessons they actually need from their chosen religious tradition or faith tradition. That's kind of like the reason, anyways, to get to the point, I don't like the word religious. And this video was actually inspired by Muhammad Hoblis lecture he gave a while ago. I don't agree with him on everything, but I think the brother is, authentic in what he preaches. And he talked about this where he didn't really like the word religious. And I also do not like the word religious because it's a descriptive that doesn't really mean anything. And especially nowadays, people can point at like David Duke and be like, oh, that guy's religious. He talks about Jesus all the time. Yeah. It's just like an example, like a kind of example. Or, it's the people who are just performative in their faith and they don't actually live their faith tradition. And I think that's a real problem within American society. The fakeness of people in general, where everything is performative and nothing is authentic. People desperately want the authentic in American society, but they don't actually know how to differentiate that. But that's just neither here nor there. Point of the video, I don't like the word religious. I don't like to use it. And I don't think it's a good descriptive of somebody who is trying to authentically live within their faith tradition. Anyways, this has been Belial's Tea House, and thanks for stopping by the Tea House, guys.
パキスタンより西のイスラム世界じゃ挨拶はこう言うんじゃ。まずスマイルで、アッシャラームアレイクム。